As a health or life coach, becoming fully self-employed within your coaching business is the dream for so many of us. However, it comes with a massive identity shift. On today's episode of the Wholehearted Business Show, we're exploring how to successfully navigate this huge identity shift so that you can come out the other side stronger and happier in your business. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about the massive identity shift that happens when you actually achieve what is, for most of us, a big dream that we have, which is to be able to be completely self-employed within our own coaching business. This is something that I've obviously gone through in my work, and I wanted to explore this because while there's a lot of content and information out there about the practicalities of what that looks like, from the legalities of starting your own business, what you need to manage from finances to marketing to all that kind of stuff, and we will touch on that today, there's not a lot talked about when it comes to actually what happens internally when you make this jump, because it is a jump, especially if you are coming from a more traditionally employed background. It can be quite a disconcerting shift. So we're going to explore what that looks like and how you can successfully navigate it. This is one area of business where working with someone one-to-one in a mentor and a coaching capacity can be really, really helpful so that you can navigate what's going on for you, what is coming up, the practicalities as well of shifting from being employed to actually being self-employed or running your own business. It can be really helpful to work with someone around this. Obviously, I support people one-to-one, and the shorter option for my one-to-one coaching mentoring package, where you can work with me over 3 to 4 months, that option is going to be disappearing. So if you want to be able to work with me one-to-one over a shorter period of time, then please do get in touch. That option is going to be available until about the end of June before I kind of quietly let that one go, and the only option will be to work with me over a much longer period of time, which is fantastic for most people. But if you want to have that shorter option, then please do get in touch. Like I say, working with someone one-to-one around any aspect of your business can be so beneficial. So please do reach out if you want to have a chat about what that could look like. So as I said, when we make this big shift from maybe being employed, maybe being part-time employed, whatever that has looked like for you, to then actually becoming your own boss, shall we say, in your coaching practice, it can come with a lot of big feelings, and we're going to explore what all of that looks like today. And as I said, how you can manage that and really come out thriving at the other side. And I've learned so much about this process from what I went through when this happened to me that I'm going to share. And yeah, you can come out of this so much more strongly. It is normal though, and I think it's really useful for people to know that although it can feel like a big moment, like you've achieving this dream, it can come with a lot of big feelings. One of the biggest things that you will feel when you make this shift is that all of a sudden you are on your own. You do not have a team around you. For most of us, you will not have a manager who you have to report to. You will be on your own, and that can be a really, really big thing, and an unexpected thing sometimes as well. So navigating how that feels and what that looks like, you have to wear a lot of hats as someone who runs a coaching practice or a coaching business. You will not only be the person delivering the service and being the coach, you will also be the person doing the admin, doing the finances, doing the marketing, doing the sales. You are a complete company in your own right. And I just want to take a moment as well just to say that I just have so much respect for anyone who does this and who goes through this, because it isn't easy. We're all doing it for a reason, because we really want to help people. We love the process of coaching. We want more freedom in our lives, all of that good stuff, which we'll explore later. But it is such a big thing, and you are all of a sudden this person who is running this business, sometimes with no previous experience of running a business as well, and is coming into this, and you have got all these hats to wear, and that is a lot, and that is a big identity shift when you perhaps have had in an employed role one very specific role, maybe with lots of different jobs under that you need to do, but you know which hat you've had to wear in your previous role, and now all of a sudden you are having to wear many, many hats. So that can be quite a big thing to navigate. And when you actually look at what you lose when you move away from an employed role and into a self-employed role, you know, that might be things like actually knowing that you have someone there to go to. Like, one of the things I often find with my clients and with myself as well when I first started this was that I had no one to kind of ask if I was doing this right. I had no one who was there to validate my decisions or to give me some praise or to call me out on something. I had no one in that role. And again, this is why I am such a, obviously, massive fan of working with a coach in your business, on your business, and around this type of stuff, because it does give you that support, especially at the start. And I'm not saying that you need that all the way through, because certainly at the point that I'm at in my business, I don't need to go and ask someone if I've done something right and get a gold star. I don't need that. But actually, it's actually fine if you need that at the beginning. It really, really is. And it can be so helpful, and it can make that transition a lot easier. But not having that person in your work and life that you can go to for that kind of advice, support, validation, all of that stuff can be really tricky. Another thing that you can miss from your employed role is just having a team or having work friends. We don't have the chat around the water cooler when we're working by ourselves. And a lot of it is working by yourself from home, and it can be lonely. And it is really, really important to highlight this, because working on your own is not right for everyone. And again, this is something that I have supported clients with through navigating that realization and that understanding that actually the way that they were setting up their coaching business was not actually going to make them thrive, because actually what they need is more social interaction. And there are ways that you can bring that into your business. And I think getting to understand what you need on a day-to-day basis is really, really valuable. So once you understand that, you can start to adjust your business to make it make sense. But again, don't be surprised almost if you find that working by yourself is not right for you and you do need something different. And again, that is something that you can navigate and work on as well. Something else that can be quite a challenge is just not having the natural separation between work and life. When you are running your coaching business, it can feel like things get very, very entangled. And the degree to which that is helpful or not helpful really varies on you. And in a few minutes, we're going to explore how you can structure things to support you if you need that. But it can cause issues not having that natural separation. So it's really interesting to think about, like, how do you want this to look for you, and how does that separation need to look between work and life? Some people really thrive on very, very little separation and it being very fluid. Some people need much more structure. And again, we are highly sensitive, heart-centered coaches, and where we fall on this is going to depend on our makeup and where we are, what it is that we need. So it's a really interesting question to sit with and just think about, like, actually how much separation do I need or benefit from, or do I actually need a lot more integration? There is also often a period of time after you make that big jump where you move from being employed, you perhaps hand in your notice, and then you're kind of doing this thing as a coach, and you make that jump where you will feel really deeply uncomfortable, and you might feel like you're kind of playing at being a business owner. You kind of just like role playing, cosplaying as a coach, and it feels a bit fraudulent. It brings up all of those kind of imposter syndrome type feelings that you're not cut out for this. It can feel like such an uncomfortable shift, and anything that does require you to shift identity is going to feel uncomfortable. So I think it's really great to just acknowledge that it's very normal to experience these kind of feelings when you're making such a massive shift, not just in the practicalities of what your life looks like and what you need to manage, but also from the internal shift that goes on in terms of your identity, and moving from someone who perhaps you might have had an identity that was really heavily attached to your job. If you were a teacher or a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever it was, you might have a big part of your personality, your identity, sit within that role, and losing that can be quite significant, and it takes a big jump to kind of come into the position of a coach. So just be gentle with yourself and know that it won't last forever, but there is a period of discomfort that is very, very normal when you make that shift. Another thing that you've got to look out for kind of on the back of that is noticing where you are behaving or acting in a way that is not conducive to your thriving in your business because of these difficult, uncomfortable, fraudy, imposter syndrome like feelings. And that can look like anything from having no boundaries with clients, people pleasing, working with people at a much, much lower rate than you would do usually because you just want to have the income and you want to have that financial safety in place, and you're kind of spinning your wheels a little bit around that. It can look like overworking because you've got no structure. So it's really, really helpful just to have an awareness of the ways in which some of those feelings can actually present themselves on a really practical day-to-day level, so that you don't fall foul of some of the ways that you might almost self-sabotage in a way because of this shift and because of the feelings that brings up. So being able to, again, potentially work with someone to support you around this and to kind of support you through this shift can be really, really useful, obviously. But if not, it is just really helpful to notice if you are starting to exhibit any of these things and where those things come from. What is at the root of those behaviours? Or if you do find yourself that you are overworking or undercharging or over-delivering, all that kind of stuff that we can do at any point in our businesses, let's face it, especially these people who are highly sensitive and heart-centred. But especially in this transition period, it can be useful just to examine what is actually going on for you and what is beneath those shifts in your behaviour and how it is that you're acting as well. And what this has looked like for me has been, I was in an employed role. I was working for a non-profit organisation. We worked with other charities and non-profits to support them. I had quite a clear role that I finally had felt confident in. I'd wanted to train as a coach. I did my health coach training alongside my employed role, my full-time employed role. I was doing all of this stuff with my blog. I was starting to work with clients. I was still employed full-time, juggling things, building my business on the side and really investing a lot of time into it. And then the transition for me, it wasn't as clear cut as it might be for some of you, because what happened for me was I went through another massive identity shift, was that I had a child. So what happened was I reduced my hours down to kind of part-time, I think. So I was kind of part-time in my job. And again, that is a great option if you want a more gentle kind of transition into things. But I know that's not available for everybody. But I worked part-time. I was pregnant. I was building my business. I was busy actually creating a recipe book that was going to be published. It has been published. You can go on Amazon and find it. I think if it's still available, because this is going back quite a while now. But I was working on this recipe book and I was pregnant and my child came early, and then I had like a rough maternity leave. And that was kind of me into the business. And I had to kind of jump into the space of being a mother and navigating business and navigating, at the time, a poorly premature baby. And it was a lot. So my kind of transition was like, the universe was like, hey, Laura, you're going to have to buckle up because this is going to be really, really hard. And it was very, very intense. And yeah, it was a really massive identity shift. And I think that some of the things that I struggled with at that time were things just feeling like I just didn't have someone who had my back. So I had a great relationship with my manager at my previous job. I missed having someone there that I could rely on. And what I learned over the months and years that followed that was that I had to become the person I had to rely on, and I had to build that level of self-trust. My business has been through ups and downs. My life has been through ups and downs since that time. And I transitioned into this business between 2012 and 2014. So I opened my limited company, did my health coach training in 2012, had my son in 2014, and it was that transition where I was working on things behind the scenes and working part-time and doing all of that. But it still came with quite a significant big shift when I did the whole I'm no longer employed anywhere. Oh my God, this is my whole thing. I've now got a child that I need to look after as well. And I was always when I was married, I was always the main breadwinner in the family. So it was a lot of pressure. So I'm sharing that because I have lived this. I have literally been through this, probably a more severe version of a more dramatic version of what perhaps some of you guys are experiencing. Although I know maternity leave is a common time for people to make these kind of shifts. So I do get that as well. And it really was missing that structure, missing that support, and kind of having to figure out how to make this work and building that level of self-trust. And I think that's one of the most important things. If I could give people anything to take away from this episode of the show, it's like building that self-trust. It does take time, but you will become a more confident business owner, self-employed person the more that you step into this role, the more that you get comfortable with your identity. And part of that comes down to getting some really key things in place when this happens. So a really simple thing that you can do is really look at, like, actually, how do you want your week-to-week, day-to-day life and business to look like? Now, again, it's going to shift, and it's not that you're going to land on something that's going to be how it is forever. But one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a really good friend who was also going self-employed at a similar time was like, you don't have to recreate the 9 to 5. And I think there's a big temptation when we are moving from a more traditionally employed role into our coaching business that we feel like we've got to be chained to our desk and working between 9 and 5. A lot of the reasons why we want to do this kind of work is so that we have the freedom to not have to do that. So it's really important to remind yourself that if you feel like part of your identity is getting really attached to the fact that, like, you need to be working all this time and that your business isn't going to be successful unless you are literally finding something to do every hour between 9 and 5, you don't have to do that at all. So I think kind of taking it a step back is really thinking, how do you want your life to look? Like, actually, if you were designing your week, and I've done this exercise a lot, I repeat this at least once a year to, like, connect with what I want this to look like so that I don't get stagnant, and because my life is always changing, that it reflects what's going on. But really think about, if you wanted your life to look a certain way, like what would this structure look like? When do you need to work? When are you actually most productive? When do you want to fit other things in? And kind of create a bit of a sense of structure around that. Now, again, as highly sensitive, heart-centered, possibly neurodivergent people, what each of us are going to need in terms of that balance between structure and fluidity is going to be different. I do like to have a little bit of structure, but I do also like to have a bit of movement within that. And I like to feel like I've got some kind of set routines that kind of keep me pinned during the week. So the way that my week tends to look is that I have Mondays. I try not to have client meetings on Mondays because I need the Monday to get myself set up after the weekend, to get back in, to do certain specific tasks that are very much about the business growing and building. And that is really important. So that's what Mondays look like for me. And again, I kind of have a bit of a theme on each day, roughly, about the kind of work that I do on each day. A Tuesday and Wednesday is days that I have group calls for Wholehearted Business and I see clients. And I've tried as much as possible, and my clients will know this because I'm often saying, sorry, I'm not available any other time. And it's hard to be that boundary sometimes. But I really try and keep my client calls to those days. It benefits me hugely not to have calls scattered throughout the week. I'd love to be more flexible, but I know that the cost of that on me is too high. So I have specific days to see clients. A Thursday, I will usually work on something again that is more business building, or it's more admin-y, it's more kind of client support type stuff, but not actual client sessions. And Friday is very much a day that I will often just have off. It's a day there that kind of mops up any extra tasks that need doing, but I will very often just not work on a Friday, and that suits me great. And then also throughout the week, I will have other things going on. So I will pop out and meet friends for coffee. I did that this morning. I had a friend pop in this morning and have a quick coffee with me for an hour. And that was lovely that I've got the flexibility to do that. I will go to the gym, and I know that my best time for the gym is 1:30, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So I will often have that in there and do that around work. I will go for a run. I'll sometimes go and do yoga. And again, I have my pattern and my routine around things. So there's enough flexibility there. And again, if I do need to do extra work, I will do it on an evening, and I will do it on a weekend if there's a little bit of more of that kind of stuff has happened during the week. If there's been more of the social life stuff happening during the week, then I will pick it up on the weekend. And again, because I am a single mum and I am kind of navigating a co-parenting relationship, and I am also dating someone, and we've got a thing going on in terms of how often we can see each other, and it's navigating all of that. And I'm just very, very grateful that I've been able to structure my business to support that. So having a bit of a structure in your week and really looking at, what do you actually need to thrive? Do you need to be available every day to pick your kids up from school? Like, how is that gonna look? Do you just want to work between 9 and 3? Do you want to have Fridays off? Really think about what you want that to look like, and that can be so helpful as a starting point. You also might want to think about, in terms of this big identity shift, is what makes you feel like a legitimate coach business owner? Because again, this is a really, really interesting thing. And what a lot of people find is that they need to be working with people. Like, obviously from a financial point of view, if you are running this as your main gig, you need clients to pay the bills. But if you don't have as much financial pressure and you are still kind of being self-employed and running your own business, a lot of people find they need to coach, whether these are paying clients or not, because the act of coaching and having regular client sessions, the mindset, energetic benefits that brings is worth it, and you're much more likely to attract paying clients. So sometimes there's a bit of a navigation to do there, and I do have an episode of the show that I will link to where we talk about, should we work with people for free? So I'll link that, and that will explain what my perspective is on all of that. And again, if you do need support, and whether that's working with a coach or mentor like myself, whether that's finding some other business besties, whether that's connecting with people in a co-working environment, if you do recognise that you need some kind of support that feels like a supportive relationship. And again, I'm not a boss or a manager to any of my clients at all, but I do know that I play sometimes the role of, I just need to talk this through with someone. I just need to get your take on this. I just need to kind of like get a sense check on whether or not this is right. And part of my role is making sure that I help build the self-confidence and the self-trust in my clients too. But it's very natural to need that and still want that. But that doesn't have to come from a coach or mentor. That can come from having business besties. That can come from finding people locally through a co-working relationship or co-working space. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. So think about what it is that you need from that perspective that is going to support you again through the stuff that's going to come up with this shift. And for me, in terms of the time side of things and planning what it is that I'm working on, I'm a massive fan of what I do, which is mini seasons. That can be quarterly for you or monthly plans, and then kind of letting that rattle out into the week and then the day. And I kind of have a whole system of planning. I will link to the episode of the show where I talk about my mini season plans and how much I adore them, because they absolutely just make all of my life make sense. And I could not function without Notion and without these plans. So check out that episode of the show if you're interested, especially if you are a parent or have care and responsibilities, because it's so helpful. So having that kind of stuff in place and really thinking about it is so useful. And ultimately, just to kind of recap, this shift that we go through, it's very exciting. And again, it can feel like you've won the lottery, because this is what a lot of us want. We want to be fully self-employed, fully working in our own coaching business gig. And it's amazing, but it does come with some of these uncomfortable feelings, and it is a transition and it is an identity shift. And I think navigating that identity shift can be tricky, but it's such a rite of passage, I think, in this work. And again, I shared a bit about what mine looked like, and it was quite intense. But when you get through the other side of it, putting some structures in place, reviewing those and reflecting on what it is that you need, not being so attached to your old identity, and recognising the ways, I think, that perhaps your old work has shaped who you are, starting to let that go and stepping into this new person that you are, this new identity as a coach, as someone who is a business owner, and just doing the work through that can be so beneficial. There you go, guys. I hope that's been useful. As I said, if you do want to work with me one-to-one, the shorter and also less costly, less of an investment option to work with me one-to-one is going to be disappearing soon. If you do think that now's a great time to work with someone, and again, I know we're about to go into the summer, but I'm very flexible with how we schedule sessions and things like that. If you are interested in working together, please do get in touch. The links are in the description if you want to find out more about what working with me one-to-one looks like. All of the costs and everything as well are very transparent on my website, so do go and check out the link. And yeah, and I hope that you have a fantastic week. If you are watching on YouTube, please leave me a comment below. Let me know if you've made this transition, what was helpful for you, or if you are considering doing it, what would you like to hear from other people who have already made this? What advice would be helpful for you? Let me know in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast and you have any feedback on this episode from me, please do reach out on Instagram. I'm at wholeheartedlylaura over there. And I will see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.